Hey everyone, how's it going? It is Friday, TGIF for a lot of us. Some of us need more time. If you're like me, sometimes you just need an extra day or two to really get some things done. But nonetheless, we all need a break. So the weekend is coming and I'm excited for that. I got some good news. So I hit 50 today, 50 burpees in one session. Yep. So let's go. We got to celebrate the small wins here. And I think that what I'm going to end up doing is probably plateauing. I don't know. We'll see. Just kind of staying at the 50 mark for a little bit and then moving on. I don't know. Some of y'all might think, nah, just keep pushing. The goal was to try to hit like maybe 90 before the year was out. Right, because I think that's if I keep adding every day, I think I'll probably reach that. But I did have to do like 2 extra ones today to actually hit 50. I wanted to end the week on 50, so I don't know. We'll see. So today we're going to be talking about urgency and how to not just prioritize. Sometimes you don't need to prioritize when you need to leave something just for a moment to go somewhere else. Sometimes it's going to be so obvious that it pushes you in the direction that you need to go, and you have to stay there for an undetermined amount of time, and then you go back to the thing that you were starting. So we're gonna use as our starting text Matthew chapter 2, beginning in verse 13. And I just want to give you some context. So this is just when Jesus was born, and him and his family, Mary, Joseph, they encounter the wise men. It's a humble yet still celebratory experience that's happening. But then there's an obstacle that needs to be overcome. It's not necessarily a plot twist. It's just, things are good and then things kind of go back down, just kind of how stories in life just works. And so in verse 13, here's what happens. It says, "And when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child," that's Jesus, "and his mother, Mary, and flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him." Okay. That's all I'm going to read for this section here. The point is this. You remember when let's recap. So we talked about starting over. Some of us have a self-sabotaging need to continue beginning things over and over and over. Actually, at some point, it's really starting over as a euphemism for quitting. Like some of us just need to stop quitting and just keep sticking with the thing that we're doing, right? But some of us, we try to we connect or we conflate, we confuse starting over with shifting over. So we looked at Abraham. Sometimes when you're in the promise, when you're in the thing that you're doing, circumstances change. There was a famine. So he just transitioned over to another place, built what he needed to do, survived how he needed to survive with his family, but it wasn't perfect. Him and Sarah, they did some shady stuff while they went away and then came back. But the point is this, there still was this shifting so that the promise that they were in could sort itself out. There was a famine and then they could come back. Sometimes that's what happens, right? That's life. The second one or the third one was actually taking over. So we looked at Joseph and how Joseph was able to be the best servant in prison, the best servant for Potiphar's house, and then also the best servant leader as a prime minister. And this whole idea of taking over is, once you shift over, you take over by being the best servant, being the best value, the most valuable person in the space that you are in, even though it's not the final destination, or even though it's not the goal that you had originally set out to do. Okay, so that's part of what this thing is. Taking over is by serving to your biggest or your best capacity. And that's also something that a lot of us have to continue working on, me as well, where just because you're not where you want to be, maximize where you actually are before you get to the next place, because there's probably some personal development, some skills, things that are going to be necessary for you to actually deploy when you do get to that space. Then we talked about speaking over, right? Moses yesterday, his issue wasn't that he shifted. I mean, it was 40 years, but it was just a hard time for him to truly believe that what he originally did, he might have done it prematurely. He was liberating the people. He killed one of the guards, and it was difficult for him to deal with that. He left. The point is this: God had to tell him, "You tell them that I sent you." right? And so he had to speak over his own self. Sometimes we need to declare not just to other people, but to ourselves, the original, the very first thing, or the last set of assignments, whatever it is that has been placed on our hearts and what God has given us. So that was the speaking over. Okay, so now with this running over, this is literally not a shift, but there's this sense of urgency where times will come where somebody or something is going to sabotage, kill the dream, maybe even you, and you need to get out of there as much as you want to stay. Why? Because you staying there is probably, not even probably, most likely going to hurt the very thing that you have. In this case, it was Mary, Joseph, who had Jesus. If they stayed where they were, Jesus would have died. And so for a lot of us, if it's your business, it's your, the baby that you have. For a lot of us, that's what our businesses are. Or if you actually literally have a child, or if you have anything that is bigger than what you have conceived, or it's something that you want to put your legacy towards, there are times when you're going to have to make a move. We call this pivoting. You're going to have to make you're going to have to make an agile move to shift in order for the thing to still be able to thrive, even though it doesn't look like where you are right now, even though it doesn't look like it's going to work out. So what does that look like practically? Okay, well, one of the ways that you're actually going to be able to know when it's time to run to a different direction, just so that you can protect the thing that you have, is you need to learn how to prioritize. Okay. Now, some of you know Eisenhower's urgency principle, which talks about what's important and urgent, and then another quadrant that's important but not urgent, and then not important but urgent, and then not important and not urgent. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just want you to know that there is a paradigm that's out there. Some of you have already heard this before. If it's important and if it's urgent, that's the thing that you want to do ASAP. That's the thing that's the most important. If it's important, but it's not urgent, most times you want to, I think, is it to delegate? Let me see. I know it's scheduling the time to do it. Okay. That's when, and this is now putting on a leader mindset where important and urgent, get that done right away. Important, but not really urgent, schedule it for it to be done. Now, if it's not important, but it's urgent, delegate, give it to somebody else to do. You don't waste your time, or I shouldn't say waste your time, but take up your time doing the things that is urgent, but it's not necessarily that important for you to do. You want to focus on, once again, the things that need to happen as soon as possible. And then there's the not important, and then the not urgent. And quite frankly, we would call those distractions. So how do you know when to shift? How do you know when to run? Well, if it's not important and it's not urgent, stop running. Some of us run towards everything that happens, or run away from, anything that might get in the way, because we don't know how to prioritize. If you're always running to something, that means that everything is urgent for you. And if everything is urgent, then nothing is urgent. Does that make sense? It kind of normalizes a thing. If you're always busy doing everything, you just have a life of busyness. There's no time to do anything, but there's always time to do everything. If that makes sense, then it's going to be difficult for you to truly prioritize. You are, in a sense, self-sabotaging your own priority. So how do you prioritize? Well, this is and I came across this list, which is pretty cool, how to prioritize your tasks and your time. And guys, this is really just go ahead and Google this, and you'll see so many different paradigms. But I like this one because this one is really succinct here. So one of the first things that you want to do is you want to capture everything on a master list and then break it down monthly, weekly, and daily. Okay. Now, I already told you guys what I use. I use a planner that allows me to write down my annual goals, and then it does break it down monthly, weekly, and daily. And that is so key for me. I triage the top 3 things that I need to do every day. Do they always get done every single day? Not every time, guys, but at least I know the specific things that need to be done. And so those things get pushed to the next day, especially if they're urgent and important. So the next thing is you want to separate, like we just said, the urgent from the important tasks. And you want to use something like the Eisenhower matrix. Then you also want to rank your daily tasks by their true priority. Now, some people use the Ivy League method, which can be useful. But the point is, even if you have your urgent for the day, your important for the day, then rank them. Which one is the one where you're eating the frog, so to speak? What's the most difficult task? You usually want to take care of that one first when you have the most energy. Then you want to separate your tasks with similar priorities. Some people use the ABCDE method. Like, guys, there's a lot of different frameworks and methods and paradigms to use. So I'm just calling these out just in case some of these might resonate with you and you want to look back for this. Then you set a productive tone for the day by what, like I mentioned before, eating the frog, the most difficult, the hardest task. You want to take care of that one as soon as possible. Cut out the good enough goals with Warren Buffett's 2-list strategy. So that's another framework that you can use. Be aware of the sunk cost fallacy when choosing what deserves your time. So in other words, you want to be flexible enough to change your mind and drop priorities. Okay. And then you also want to be able to use, sometimes for those of you who really want to get a little bit more in depth, time multipliers to make the most of your daily hours. And last but not least, guys, you want to prioritize your most important work during your most productive hours. So some of you, you're most productive in the evening. Some of you, you're most productive in the morning. I will say this, looking at, I think it's Mason Curry. He has a book called Daily Routines for Creatives. It's probably not the accurate title, but he has interviewed and I think maybe more so researched a lot of popular, I guess, renowned creative artists, musicians, I think maybe even scientists. And there was a common pattern. And the biggest one is they all started early in the morning. And most of them, if not all of them, finished early in the evening. They weren't really working into the late night hours. We're not saying that that's not necessary sometimes, but they did have a routine that they stuck to. I listened to one today. Actually, I think it was I'm not sure if it was Jim Rohn, but actually not today, yesterday, where they talked about one of the ways that you can build a simple routine. And this is something that I still need to work on, is eating at regular times every day. Like, that's a tough thing for a lot of us. Now that I've been working from home a lot, it's been challenging to literally, my phone will vibrate and say, hey, yeah, it's time. It's about that time. Go ahead and eat lunch or go ahead and eat dinner. And I'm like, not yet. I still got to work. You creating those simple tasks, those simple priorities where you in a timely manner say every day at 12 o'clock, this is the time that you, and sometimes for those of you that are working, traditional hours, you have no choice. That is the only time you get because you won't get the time off in any other space when it's time to work, and they also take that out of your check. So the point is this, guys, you want to be able to set simple, achievable goals, simple, achievable routines so that eventually you get into this pattern. You get into this pattern and you start repeating the pattern and you start mastering the behavior of what successful people do. They all do it, guys. They all do it. Okay. So that's it. The way that you know how to run with a sense of urgency and sometimes away from the scene that you are in so that you can protect the very thing that you were working on is by prioritizing your time. That's how you run away from certain things with urgency, and that's how you run towards certain things with urgency. Now let's put the spiritual twist on this. The angel told Mary and Joseph, don't come back until I tell you. This is where now, for those of us that do believe in God, for those of us that are spiritual, we understand that this thing called life is bigger than us. And so there are things that we can't see. There are things that are foreseen by God only, or by people that he might place in our path. And we have to now occupy the time that we're in, where we are, for as long as he says so. And then we shift and we move when it's time for him to say, go ahead and move back over. Okay, guys. So that is the piece that I want you to understand. Yes, we do believe in free will. And yes, there is a time and a season for us to just go all in. As a matter of fact, it should be all the time, right? To just go all in. But there are moments when you have to sit still, occupy where you are, and wait for the green light to go back to what you might have already set out to do, or what he's already placed on your heart to do. That could be a relationship. That could be a business. That can be a project. That can be anything that you can think of that you have set out for in your heart to do, and that he's placed in your heart to do. Sometimes he's like, okay, take a pause. I need you to move over here and stay over here until I tell you it's okay to come back. Have that balance. Learn how to do the priorities. Use the Eisenhower matrix. Use the Ivy Lee model. Use the ABCDE framework. All of these things are for our benefit to learn how to prioritize properly and knowing when to shift knowing when to run. All right, guys. So I just want to say that as we're looking at the paradigm of the anti-hero, this is all going to be connected, and eventually I will be working on one of these sound offs so that I don't keep saying, well, I hope this is valuable. I know this is valuable. Okay. And one of the things that we are going to be discussing is how the point of your most the depth of like where you are in humiliation, or just where you are where you feel like you're in shame, can also be the same pinnacle of a place where you can redeem your honor and live a life not just of success. There's a difference between success and honor. We want you to live an honorable life. All right, guys. So be encouraged and make this Friday a great one. We'll see you tomorrow.